If you're a sports physical therapist and you want to maximize your professional potential, but you know there's things getting in the way, if you want to know four things that are currently limiting your professional development as a sports physical therapist and you don't even know about it, you need to tune into this episode. Before I go on to the podcast, what is new in life? For all those who've been listening to my previous podcast, it has been a whirlwind of the last probably 10 or 12 weeks. I like to travel quite a bit during this period. There's just a lot of conferences that are happening. So I was in Orlando, I was in Boston, I was in Austin, I was in Houston, I was back to Florida and then Ohio. It has been absolute chaos and in the best way possible. So I have a wealth of like information that I want to share with everyone. There's just tons of things. I'm going to simplify it today to four things that are limiting your professional growth. And I came up with this topic because in the last 8 weeks that I've been traveling and just interacting with a lot of sports physical therapists, both that are like new grads or well established and everywhere in between. I've realized that there are a lot of things that you're not seeing in your professional career. You know, you're trying to advance, you're trying to take the great courses, you're trying to find mentorship, trying to do these things. And if I could mentor you from the beginning or where you're currently at, these are the four things that I would share for you. It's the things I'm having discussions with after seeing people go different directions or regretting going to different jobs or different pathways. It's the four things that I would told you from the beginning that you would have seen a little sooner, or maybe you've made those mistakes and now you're like, well, what else can I do now? Or I'm about to make some big decisions professionally. What should I be considering? And honestly, after all of these discussions with people and talking to people at CSM and leadership development conferences, and just really taking a step back and even talking to my team, I realized that you only see what you see. I'm on a big leadership kick at the moment. I have a leadership team that I lead, and I really enjoy coaching and developing because it's not an easy feat. I think that you listen to my previous episodes, being a leader of one is very, very critical. And that means that you just got to, make sure that you're taken care of in terms of your growth and everything else. And I think a lot of physical therapists, we're very empathetic human beings. I think we care and we try and fix everybody. We're fixers, our spouses, our significant others, and everything other things. And I think being a leader of one is so critical. So that's probably been the biggest topic of what we've been discussing as a team and everything I've been giving to people. But I'm going to give you four things today, and I want to tell you why I did that. And a small little bonus on that is to truly be a leader of one wherever you are. You're worrying about everybody else, but it's you that matters right now, because you're the one who goes through it all. You're the one in the brain space and really tackling all those challenges. So we're going to talk about where you're stuck, where you will be stuck, and four things that are limiting your growth as a sports PT that you don't even consider. So I'm going to start off with this, really, really straightforward. I'm very passionate about this because, wherever you are in your career, if you think that you're doing awesome, you're doing amazing, good for you. I think that that's very important to know that you have that confidence. But the problem becomes if somebody else was looking at your exact same scenario, would they have that same would they have that same feedback? Would they see you in that same light? And you might see yourself in a specific zone or on a specific targets. And I can tell you when I'm working with other sports physical therapists, I think that you can have loftier targets. You can have things that are a little bit more unreasonable, but I'm going to break it down into four simple things. The first one is I've been through, I think I did like 6 PT interviews over the last week. Those who've been listening and actually applied or going through the process with me, I really appreciate you and thank you for your patience through this whole process. Our interview process is very extensive, is because we care about the human behind the position. We really do. And after going through these interviews, there's a couple things that I took from that, and here's one. I think sports physical therapists unintentionally care more about learning than they do about growing. And Let me say it again. I think a lot of physical therapists care more about learning than they do about growing, and it's unintentionally. What I mean by that is, I have so many physical therapists will say, "Hey, Chris, I listen to your podcast, or I've been listening to all these other things. I've been reading these books, and I've been doing these things." And I'll ask a simple question, what are your big takeaways, and what are you currently doing that took from those podcasts? And it really stumps people. They think back, they're like, I don't know, that's a really good question, but and I'll hear they'll say, I've been listening to like 5 podcasts this week, and I read 3 books. And in my head, I think that's a little much. I think that's a lot of learning. It's like being in school, it's being fed information. And the difference between you learning that information and you growing is a big separation of implementation. And that's you literally using that information and taking it to the next level, and trying it with 3 or 4 patients, working through that, navigating it. Oh, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? Working through that versus taking on 50 new topics every single week. You're so inundated, it becomes very difficult for you to actually be productive. And I think a lot of this is a new grad specialty. This one specifically, I think a lot of new grads are just pumping themselves with information, just thriving, Instagram, YouTube, articles, you name it. And it's too much. It's too much. It's too much. And that's the question I get. We're like, well, how much do I do? And honestly, I think you need to put somebody in front of you. I think you need to have somebody right by your side giving you that feedback. I can do it in, podcast form, but I need to I need to understand where your career path is. What are you looking for? Do you want that dream job? Are you nice and comfortable with where you're at? What's the goal? What are you trying to accomplish? Because you can't say I want to be the best physical therapist. Well, what does that look like? And you just can't keep absorbing information. So if it's difficult for you and you find yourself stuck, you feel like you're trying to take all this information in, but you just haven't seemed to change. You haven't seemed to really, from last year to this year, it's very different. Sorry, it's not very different. And you feel like you're doing all the right things, just it's not adding up to you being a better clinician. Like you're still stumped on hard cases. And I think that you're just trying too hard to take in your information. I think at some point you need to settle down and you need to help get somebody to help you navigate these things. And I'm a big fan of the mentorship, and I don't like today's view of mentorship. That you have to have somebody right over you and hovering, and it has to be every single week. I don't think that's the case. I honestly think that a monthly check-in with your mentor is a big deal, because if your mentor is doing it right, you should be taking information, applying it, come back, figure out what didn't work, what worked, answer questions that are already asking, what's the biggest challenge you have? Where are you stuck? And what do you want to be able to accomplish? And those 3 questions put you in an advantage, because you're now thinking like, what did I do wrong? What do I need to do right? And what am I currently doing that's actually working that I don't need to touch? And once you kind of navigate that introspective reflection, you're actually going through that thought process. That's real mentorship. And mentorship is not learning new techniques. That is the lowest, most superficial form of mentorship. And if you find yourself stuck, it's because you're constantly learning but not growing, and you don't have no implementation because you don't have anybody beside you. And you might think, well, Chris, I can do it by myself. That's bull crap. You cannot. You are limiting your growth. It's like somebody trying to learn how to play baseball by themselves with nobody around. It's not even possible. I don't care where you what got you to this point. You're probably a stud. You're probably amazing. You have great grades. You're just a great superhuman. You're a good clinician. However, you're going to be stuck at that same rate. And if you really want to take it up a notch, I think you have to really take it serious and just find somebody to be like, can I just bounce some ideas off of you monthly? Let me just borrow you an hour of your time, pay them for the hour, do whatever it is. I think that you need to stop learning. And I really think that you need to start implementing slash growing. That's the first thing, especially new grads, that's just going to limit their growth. That first year is super slow because they're trying to learn everything and be a sponge. However, they're not refining anything. They're not going through that thought process. So that's number one. Number two is something I'm very passionate about. All right. Um, there's several examples I can give on this. I grew up in a very economically challenged household, and we lived on government support. And I remember my grandma saying, It's the first of the month. We get our check this month. And I didn't know what that meant as a kid growing up. And I really started to learn the process as we went on. But ultimately, I was like, oh, we have an established pot of money that we get every single month that we get to use for the month, whether that's for food stamps or all those other things. For other people, it might be if you're a teacher, you have a monthly income. It's not usually biweekly, it's once a month. You have a monthly paycheck that you now have to use for the rest of the month. It's an allotment. I remember growing up as a kid thinking like, well, man, we have to, I'll give an example. Like, we have this $1,000 now. We have to make it stretch and make it work and all these other things. And really, what that really showed me was, um, based on our income and based on where we were stuck, the government said, this is what we can give you and this is what you're going to have to live off. And I was like, that's really unfortunate. Like, I want more. I want to be able to do things. So I had to start working. I had to start doing other things. And I realized that wasn't going to be enough for us. And it was the thought process that I didn't like, that somebody else really was determining what my capabilities were, what food I can eat, and all those other things. It was really hard for me to say, well, I was limited to how much food I can have, what types of food I can buy, and how much money I was given, and that was tough for me. And for some of you, you might have gone through different challenges in your life where you felt like, man, I just want to do more. And that's why you are where you are. And now you have freedom and you're able to, work in a great environment and create a professional path that it makes you happy, fulfilled, and those other things. But here's a block that you're not seeing. Most employers will say, hey, I'm going to give you $500 this year for Con Ed. I'm going to give you $1,000. Some people say unlimited Con Ed. And I've seen very motivated clinicians in my time as a professional, and I've seen people who don't really want to push. They say they do, but they don't want to. And one conversation that I've had with mentees before is, if you really wanted to grow and you really want to be a good clinician, why would you let your employer fix you on a budget that says you can only eat this much this year? Why would you can only do so much? You can only learn so much this year. This is how much. And my point to that is, you are reliant on somebody else's budget to dictate how much you can grow. That's like somebody saying they're allowing you to grow only to a certain point. And now you might say, well, that's what my employer does. Hold on. What do you do? Why would you let anyone limit your ability to learn just because of a budget? Now, if you're truly passionate about this, you would take that next step and use your own money. Oh, that's the, oh, how dare you, Chris? How dare you say I have to use my own money for me to learn and be a better professional? Now, my school told me exactly what I had to do to learn, and I got those grades, and I took the test, and I hit the criteria, and I got a job, and they told me this is the criteria to work here, and now this is only amount of work, amount of money that I get for to be able to learn. You're limiting your ability based on your own internal walls. And what I would say is, why aren't you investing your own money? You'd be like, well, I have to, pay my bills and everything else. Like, I totally get that. However, what's your goal as a sports physical therapist? If it's to grow, then you're going to have to use your own resources and invest in yourself, because that's the only thing down the line that is probably the best investment. It's not a house, not a car, not anything else, but the brain cells that you put in. You already put in a lot of time and energy into getting an advanced degree. Why would you let anything else say, you know what, you're done, no more learning for you? You're only going to take one course a year. It's the it's the number one response people I have to people who say, Chris, I want to take your next course. That sounds great. I'll see you in a couple months. You're like, oh, but I don't have the CEUs. You mean to tell me you really are limiting what you can do because somebody else says you can't spend more money on yourself? Why don't you just spend more money? What's 500? What's $1,000? You might be like, well, I have to now, balance that out with everything else. That's fantastic. But don't tell me that you want to be the best sports physical therapist. What you want to do is you want to be the best within your means at the current rate. Then your current rate is going to be at the rate that you're currently allowing yourself, which is one CEU a year, max two CEU years. There's no way you are actually advancing that far with one or two CEUs. And it's the number one, or it's the number two thing that is limiting your growth as a sports physical therapist. Now, consider that you really are reliant on somebody else's budget. I would consider giving yourself an opportunity to learn more, put in your own money. Now, you'd be like, what am I going to get back in return? I'll tell you what, if you're advancing in Con Ed, you're advancing in the right type of Con Ed, you become more higher caliber of a clinician and make yourself more presentable for future growth, career, business opportunities. I can tell you that because I'm an employer and I completely get that. And the ones who are limiting your ability to learn, you're limiting your ability to contribute, to be part of something bigger. Now, if you're saying, "Hey, I don't want to spend 500,000," you're limiting your ability to advance your career path. And that's the struggle that most people don't see, that an employer wants you to advance, but they're fixed on how much they can do. Now, if you move forward on your own dial and you did that, it puts yourself to be a stronger candidate to advance within the company if that's what you want. But if you're like, I just want to be a staff clinician and be a bare minimum one time year CEU, then that's the rate that you're going to do it. But the thing that's limiting you is you're reliant on somebody else saying that you can learn so much per year. So number one is learning versus growing. Number two is reliant on Con Ed from your employer or whoever that is. Number three, don't be offended at this one. I'm very passionate about this. Don't take it the wrong way. If you were in an interview recently with me, I say it all the time, and I say it with the best intent. It's not enough. What you're doing is not enough. What you're doing is not enough. What you're doing is not enough. Now, don't take that the wrong way. I'm very grateful to be around great humans, and my standard is there's always something more. You have so much more potential in you. Whenever I have a sports physical therapist, doing a mentoring session with me, and they're explaining their frustrations, I'm like, oh my gosh, why are we even talking about this? Because your potential is that much greater. Why? Like, I don't. You don't need to spend time here. I think you just need to go take more course. I think you just need to be better at this, work on this, forget that. That's so small in the grand scheme of things. You're staying stuck on things that don't matter. Just keep pumping, keep taking leadership courses, keep taking manual courses. Just put yourself in a position where you're a better clinician. Whether you agree or disagree with your employer or your coworkers, who cares? Make yourself a better clinician to put yourself in a better seat. That is it. So stop looking at where you're currently stuck. And I think and I know that you have more in you. I have the best intent because I know people have done this to me and they've done it for me, not to me. They've done it for me, not to me. You have more in you, and it just takes an outside source to show you what that's possible and how to do that and how much more to push. What do you do? How much, like, where do I push now? I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And most people, they just take a break. That's the worst thing to do. You have opportunities right after that. And what you don't see is that short little hill. And right now you're just hitting a little speed bump. And don't take it the wrong way. Whatever you're doing is not enough. And if you need that kick in the pants, I'm here for it. You think you're fantastic. I think you got more in you, more in the tank. Doesn't mean more work. It means being smart and more efficient. What's the direction that you can go? Stop wasting your time. If you've taken 5 CEU courses on manual therapy, why are you still there? That's ridiculous. There's more. There's more in you, and there's more of a potential for you to be a healthcare provider, not just a PT. There's just more. If you listen to my podcast, you know what that means. I'm obsessed with health and wellness, not just the musculoskeletal system. Number one, learning versus growing. Number two, you're reliant on somebody else's Con Ed. Number three, what you think right now is that it's enough. It's not enough, and you have more in you. So I think if you take that approach, it gives you a refreshing perspective on, gosh, there's a longer road ahead of me. There's more to be able to accomplish. It's not more work. It's just more opportunity. Number four, um, and this is a tough one for a lot of people. I think that you have unrealistic goals. Um, for some of you, they're too low. Some are just they're too far ahead. Like I want to have a job in pro sports and all these other things, which you will do. I did that, I think 2 years out of PT school, and some people get it right out of school, and for whatever reason. But what I'm saying is, I think that you can have those 3 to 5 year goals. If you really want to lock it down, you stay at three and just kind of work your way backwards. Five is a nice idea, but three is actionable. So you're going to change, you create these lofty goals, but the problem is nothing ever happens towards that goal because it's too far. So what you need to do is kind of like strength and conditioning. You have to work your way backwards and say, okay, great. If I want that in a year, what needs to happen every single quarter for this year. So if I want to become, proficient in strength conditioning, acute injury management, and manual therapy, that means how about we take 3 courses over the next 4 months, and every Saturday you're going to work, every quarter you're going to work on manual therapy. Every the month through 3 through 6, you're going to work on strength conditioning, and 6 through 9, you're going to work on acute injury management, whatever that may be. You set smaller, chunky goals to put yourself in a position that this unreasonable or unrealistic goal becomes more attainable. And I think that it's everyone's dream. I see, what people aspire to be and who they follow and what they do. But the problem is that's so far for you. And what I need to do is you need to come back, step back, and actually write things down on paper. What is actionable instead of watching videos and doing these things? What is actionable that you can be doing right now in your community to help you move forward in that direction? Not more exercises, not more manual techniques. What is it that you need? Who do you need to be surrounded by? Who is it that is going to be able to help support you? Whether that's a mentor, a group, another physical therapist, somebody side by side. Maybe it's a study group. It doesn't matter to me. I think that there's unrealistic goals that are too lofty. You don't have any chunky goals to get there, and gives you a better opportunity, a better platform to achieve those. So I think they have to be more practical. What are we doing this year? That's great that you want to do all those things. What are we doing this year? Great. What are you doing in the next 3 months? What needs to happen by month 6, 9, and 12 to say that you've actually achieved your goal? Most physical therapists haven't even thought about that. Like, I don't know, what's an objective target? I just want to be a really good sports PT. I'm going to take 2 CEU courses. Great. Now, what's the definition that you want at the end of this year that made you go towards being the best physical therapist? That's the hardest part for people to lock down. So I think that's why it has to be more concrete, more reasonable. Great. What is your definition of a great sports physical therapist? So that's your year mark. Let's work. Okay, what 2 to 3 goals need to happen in order for you to achieve to get to that next step? And that's where people struggle. So if you're a sports PT, let me show you worst case scenario. You're a sports PT, just taking in all the information. Oh, fantastic. You're limiting your CEU courses by your employer, and you're not spending a dime on yourself. You think that you're doing well right now and you're in cruise control, and you want to be the best sports PT possible. If that's your lane and that's your path, you are about to hit a brick wall for the next 2 to 3 years, and it's called burnout. And that's why, because you have unreasonable goals. You're just learning. There's no implementation. You're not surrounded by other people who are going to push you and tell you this direction to go. Now, let me give you the backup on that. Now you're listening to content, you're implementing it on a daily basis or weekly basis, and reviewing it, obsessing about it, revising everything. You're spending your own money to now put more, invest in yourself. You're thinking, what I'm doing is not good enough, and you're now having short, chunky goals. That's a clinician who's actually moving forward at a steady pace. Steady wins the race. And at that point, you're probably surrounded by people just like you. You have a mentor in place that's putting you in a position to put you on that best platform. And if you're doing the opposite route, it's limiting your growth as a sports PT, and you don't even know it. And you take this second route, you're going to be in a place where you're actually going to see growth year over year. So I wanted to share that with you. There's a lot of conversations that have been happening, and it's very genuine. If you're offended, good. If it pushes you a little bit, good. My goal here is to show you what's possible, beyond the normal. Just take more podcasts, more books, more CEUs. Be comfortable where you're at. Have a well, like, balanced lifestyle, and you can aspire to be the best sports PT. I think that's great, but that's not practical. And I think that you really need to chunk this down and really put into actionable goals. So there you have it. For those of you who've been asking, yes, I am. There's a little bit of a possibility for those who are attending my Strength and Conditioning Summit, May 18th and 19th in San Diego, or virtual. We might have somebody, guest speaker inside the course, very internationally renowned specialist, and we'll be including possible force plates into the course. So if you're interested, go and register, drchrisgarcia.com/summit. If you're loving everything that you're hearing and you want to be part of my world inside my Sports PT Academy, go to drchrisgarcia.com/academy. I'd love to see you in there. It's for the right person. If you're still on the left side thinking that learning and being reliant on Con Ed and what you're doing is good enough, it's probably not for you. But if you're on the other side and you're like, I'm all in, I'll dive in, I just need support, then it's for you. So I hope you guys are doing amazing. I will see you guys on next episode. Take care.